Welcome to my episode for today. This one is called Me In Distance. It's been so long since I wrote. I miss it. I've been experiencing some things only God may fully understand. But today, I will write about how I've been struggling to push myself forward and live without the presence of people I once loved and would have done anything for. I have a beautiful yet painful history with someone I used to know. I say beautiful because neither of us had the strong mind to understand the world the way it really was. We were just two people who loved each other, and we went separate ways. I'm not sure, but I hope, I spoke about it in my podcast or videos. It's been so long, it almost feels as though I never even experienced that breakup. For me, the breakup was my tipping point. Eventually, I spiraled with all I experienced. I was running from my own self. So when he left me with the girl I was trying to silence so I could find a place or a person I belonged to. Of course, I'm not going to tell you every detail, but just know I developed an addiction to substance abuse within this relationship. It wasn't the person's fault, but our surroundings in general. I would also like to add that after my breakup, the pain was so intense, physically and mentally, that I wished I could have grabbed my heart out of my chest and set it aside, just to escape how sick I felt. I wanted to fight for things, but mentally and physically I couldn't. That little broken girl within me had always been a victim, so it was the norm to accept that I would never amount to anything. Of course, I could have always been okay if I had not experienced homelessness in the process. But how could I accept responsibilities when I wasn't responsible enough to face myself? But anyway, that's enough of that. I don't want to disturb the girl who used to live within me. Still, I have to mention the night I overdosed. Not to glorify it, but because it was strangely beautiful in how it marked the end of a long, painful chapter. I had simply given up on myself, so in the silent night, I consumed fentanyl. I lastly remembered collapsing to the floor. I felt as though I had just laid down from my memory, and I vividly remember it being around 11 p.m. at night. I rose back up at 6 a.m. My body was ice cold. I couldn't feel my tongue or the palms of my hands, and even when I walked, I couldn't feel the floor beneath my feet. They were numb. God rose me back up. He said, "Your journey is not yet finished." God didn't want to see me again at that very moment, or basically return my soul to Him in that state. I remember I spent the entire day throwing up. Throughout the months, my body had grown so small up to that point. God's mercy was upon me that night of overdose, because during my breakup, I accepted defeat at some point. I was drinking and on other substances because all of my traumas rose up to the surface, and I was crying every day. I would be alone in the car, screaming at everything that I had ever endured in my lifetime. I screamed that I wanted to die, but the only thing keeping me alive was that God said I would go to hell for giving up on myself. So I just cried. My soul hurt. I cried. My body was weak. I cried. My mind was weak. I cried. I started realizing that all the adults in my life had failed me. I cried. I was an autistic child who had endured repeated abuse, growing up in a home soaked in domestic violence, so I continued to cry. I was angry at everything, at my father, my stepfather, and his friends. I was angry at my mother. I almost had that tendency to be angry enough to kill those who hurt me. I felt I couldn't breathe unless I ended one of these people's lives. So I just cried the entire year of 2021. I remember driving my car and feeling angry that I did not have a dad and that he had to die. I needed another parent to run to, but I couldn't. That choice Allah ripped from me. I needed a hug, and how could Allah take him? I didn't care. I thought if he and my mom had been given a second chance in life, we would have been fine. I needed him. I wanted to run to him, but he's not here, and it's not fair. I was raised alone. It's not fair. I just cried. I got so angry and I screamed, "Dad, if you would have never beaten Mom, God wouldn't have been mad at you and taken you from us." I was so angry. The abuse my mom endured made her so cold towards me the most, and I never understood why. I just broke down because in that moment, I had needed my mother the most. But she also played a part in my pain. I cried. Because at the end of the day, I knew if she knew better, she would have done better. But she didn't know, so I cried. She was a victim too, so I kept crying. I cried. My father didn't understand how badly he affected her mentally or physically, so I cried. What my body experienced as a child, and what I repeated as a child, broke me, and I just kept crying. So I screamed to Allah, "I'd rather you return me into my dust form." To my dust form. I just wanted to return. No memory, no family. I just wanted to cease to exist. All these moments happened before I officially overdosed. All of it started after my cousin's passing and after my breakup. Of course, throughout my healing and enlightenment, God told me He was always there, hearing and seeing. Allah knew I was strong enough to return back to the dunya. I apologize. I went off topic for a little bit, but it's crucial to the story. For nearly 2 years, maybe 3 years, I always thought of the boy who broke my heart. The love I had for him lingered, but it was God who was comforting me throughout the years. It was God who told me it wasn't that guy's fault, but rather fate, so I could have been woken up from the deep slumber that I was in. It was God who taught me that the guy who broke me was human too, and not to hate him as we both did each other wrong. It's God who shifted my heart to forgive him and move on, because at the end of the day, I gained the path of righteousness, and I'm stronger than I have ever been before. Fast forward, when the storm had settled and I gained immense clarity of life, one day my ex hit me up to see me. Being kind and hopeful, I did see him again. I remember he was texting me that he missed me and that he was sad in his life. I knew he was drunk and emotional, so me being me, I silently began to understand him. After all, God had made me calm, and Allah had allowed me to have no hate in me for him. I still remember the no contact. It felt nice to know he indeed thought of me. He just chose not to contact me. Although he chose not to reach out, he eventually did when I became the only person for him to seek. Someone nobody else understood. I always knew him more than his own family knew him. Intimately. I suppose that's why forgiveness was always written for him in my heart. But I should mention, after I saw him months ago when he reached out, he actually did leave me again, and blocked me again. You would think I'd be upset, but I had outgrown the chase for him. However, I did feel my heart yearn for his touch. I laid on the couch one night, my soul feeling a certain way, and I started to believe that he had triggered something within me. So I cried, and I went to sleep. The next day or 2 days later it was raining, and I raised my hands up. Because in Islam, a prayer made in the rain is always answered. I was religious and practicing to the best of my knowledge, so I knew I just couldn't do haram or sinful activities. In the rain, I asked God, if my ex was meant for me, bring him back into my life. Also, I asked God that if he was not for me, close all doors that lead to him so that my soul could forever be drenched in peace without the thought of him. And honestly, I forgot about this prayer as I was moving on with life. Then 3 to 4 months later, I got a text randomly from Messenger. Give me a moment. Let me rephrase that. I had been MIA from social media, and I thought to myself to check if I had ever received any messages. So I went in to check, and I went to Messenger. There it was, a message waiting from my ex. I would like to add, my Messenger was silenced, so I don't receive any notifications. That's how much I actually despised being online. So I opened my messages, and it was him apologizing for disappearing again and claiming he'd been out of town, which was clearly a lie. But I didn't want to argue or even care about that lie. I did ask him how he had been. He told me he would do better and treat me better. He apologized for leaving me at a time I needed him the most. So being gentle as I am, I accepted his apology. Of course. I told him I forgave him for everything he had done, and he said he was young. He mentioned all the trauma he had experienced since we weren't together, but he didn't go into too much detail. I listened to him because I understood. I had passed my fair share of trials and tribulations. He mentioned the flooding of his last home, and I suggested he stay with me for a little bit. When I offered this, I had no delusion of a future with him. I was out of love with him. I didn't know what he was truly going through. I just knew I could be a helping hand. After all, he was human, just like me. The authentic love I felt when he first arrived in my home. The sorrow I felt for him. He had been so exhausted from trying to survive mentally. He wasn't 20 anymore. He was a grown man. He looked beautiful in every way. I could still see the innocence. It reminded me of myself, trapped within my own body. There is nothing I can lie about, so I remember. He smoked, and he had never done that when I was with him. So I asked him, "When did you start smoking?" And he said, "A couple of months now." He was coughing pretty badly, too. I felt so bad seeing him smoke. I voiced that I hated him doing it, and a couple of days later, he actually quit, just like he told me he would. As far as I know, I gave him the right amount of care to no longer need cigarettes. As days went by, I watched him drink less. Many days it was only him and I at home, and I would be his comfort once again. I was the one wiping his tears. This man would be in my arms, crying every day. I would wake up in the middle of the night to him crying in the bathroom, and I comforted him in those vulnerable moments when he felt like he had nobody but me. I did my absolute best to advise him. I paid attention to his speech, his glances, the way he walked, whether he ate or not, whether he repeated his clothes, or whether he slept enough or not at all. I had days I would dream of him and wake up in the same hour to find him in the bathroom breaking down again. I wouldn't sleep until I knew he was okay. Another time, I woke up with him beside me. I would hug him and comfort him, and he would tell me it was okay, and I should go back to bed. Whenever I came home from work, I'd ask him if he was good. I'd ask how work was for him, and I even gave him extra keys as well. I remember continuously telling myself, "Don't fall in love, don't fall in love." But I knew I was failing, especially when I saw him. His hugs, his warmth, everything was pulling me in. Then one day, he kept leaving in the middle of the night, sometimes for a few minutes, sometimes for a couple of hours. I started feeling discomfort in the situation. I recall asking him if he was good, and he said he just wanted some air. I said okay, given his circumstances, but eventually I ended up repeating the question, asking if he was talking to someone else, and to let me know. He said nobody was around, and then he yelled at me that I should stop asking. We lay together every night, but now I started to see myself feeling hurt again. This entire time I had been the advisor, but not once did he realize I was also going through a hard time. During his stay with me, I was battling my own mental challenges, and he didn't see me like I saw him. The way he started acting made me feel disgusted in myself. That meant he was disgusted in me. But why? Was it because I helped him when he was down? Was I not supposed to help him? But I'm kind. Why shouldn't I be kind? I won't turn my kindness off just because I wasn't appreciated. One day, or a couple of days before he moved out, I realized he definitely was into someone else. My heart sank. I was desperately trying to separate the woman in me who helped him from the woman who dated him, and I simply couldn't. I laid in bed with him. He always let me cuddle with him. But one day I thought to myself, I realized I was laying with a man whose breakup had dragged me to hell and back. I cried because he didn't see or understand the journey I took. He only saw his own pain and his own struggle. I got off the bed and I prayed tahajjud. It was in my mind during that time and hour. I asked Allah, is something wrong with me? Am I not worth loving? What's my path now? I remembered I had prayed for him to come back. After tahajjud prayer, I went to lay on the bed, and I felt a little bit better. I cried in the comfort of Allah. On the bed, I laid away from him, not too close. I had never checked this man's phone before, or ever felt the need to do so. He never left his phone unlocked either. But after my prayer, somehow he fell asleep, and his phone remained on. I told myself, what if Allah has just answered my prayer, and He wants me to see proof that there is another woman? So I decided I'd check his phone, and he wouldn't know, because it's Allah's will that he fell asleep. I didn't even go through the text messages. My heart told me to go to Facebook instead. And there she was. What hurt wasn't just that he had said there would never be a chance of him dating anyone in the near future. It was that he had yelled there was no one in his life, forgetting that the truth eventually reveals itself. And now I knew he was both a liar and a hypocrite. I felt many emotions in those 2 days. We fought. I messaged the girl, and he moved out the same day. During our fights, I felt really bad. I was crying because I didn't like how I was feeling. Too many emotions. I felt bad for him having to move out, but at the same time, I knew I was being wronged. At some point, he stated that he would have sisters or cousins that could fight me. I don't do that. That's just not me. He had never really called me out of my name before, but he called me a word that still comes to mind sometimes. I suppose he was not only a test for me, but I was a test for him. Perhaps God was showing him that the same person you laughed at, hurt, and made look bad to your family is the same person who gave you comfort and good tidings in your time of need. Perhaps God wanted him to know that I never truly hated him, and that I let go with love, so that the day he might need me, I would be there. When he laid on my chest crying those nights, did he ever think about the fact that I had never laid on anyone's chest and cried? That all my tears had hit only the dirty clothes I wore outside? That even my tears had fallen on the very ground I walked on when I had no home? Something ignited within my soul as I wrote. I wouldn't say I hate him. What hurt me was that he couldn't see me. I wasn't desperate for his love. I only wanted him to have an understanding of me. Yes, you guessed it. I apologized one last time because it hurt me that he was upset with me. And I loved him. I guess I've always loved him. But the man he is now is not someone meant to be around me. I can handle being around him because I see him. I see him. God knows that I see him. I see him better than his family does. Because of that, I no longer want to see him. I was always trying to tell him, your mother is important, no matter the circumstances. I suppose I never shared what his traumas were, but that's because I still respect him, despite how wrong he's done to me. I'm not a victim. I chose to have him around. I'm just sharing my experience so you may have an understanding of my situation, in case you ever go through something similar. The woman he was speaking to showed up at my job once. I'm sure he had fished some sympathy out of her, but I had taken ashwagandha. I felt nothing, for real. I have outgrown this person, and I felt utter discomfort lowering myself to his level of intelligence. I don't ever wish to cross paths with him again. I aspire to keep growing and to continue learning to be compassionate. The person I am and the person he is have outgrown each other, and we must leave each other with the understanding that sometimes things are just the way they are, because God intended them to have always been that way. There are things he will experience that I will never be part of, and for once, I'm okay with that. I wish him love and prosperity in a reality I will never live in. But I am forever grateful I followed God to the best of my knowledge while he was around. Again, I am forever grateful for the goodbye. Allah is the best of planners, and any relationship that starts in a haram manner will only disappoint you, and Allah does not wish hell for the believer. Many months later, I prayed for doors to be closed between me and that person. And Allah, the most kind and the greatest listener, answered. The last time I ever saw the man I am speaking about was when he came to a job I worked at. I had no clue he was even there, but as I clocked out, I walked out the door, and, in the near distance, I saw him walking away, wearing the backpack I had given him to replace his old one. I could have yelled his name. I knew he would hear me, but instead, I watched him disappear into the distance. A man I once loved no longer mattered to me anymore. Allah had indeed closed that chapter. The story had ended in the most beautiful way. Allah made him pay me in distance. I have never reached out to him again, but I forgive him, always.